Now, Israel's military intelligence chief has stood down after saying that he takes full responsibility for the lapse in security on October the 7th. Let's get more on this breaking news story with Bernard Smith. He's in occupied East Jerusalem. So militarily, the heads have started to roll.
Yes, Aharon Haliva is the head of military intelligence, decades of experience, and was in charge on October 7th when Hamas launched that assault into Israel, the most devastating assault that Israel that has happened in Israel since the country's foundation in 1948. Now, we now know that since then, the reason that was allowed to happen was largely because of a spectacular failure of military intelligence. We now know that for up to a year before the Hamas attack on October the 7th, the Israeli intelligence had had hands on a document that pretty much detailed how October the 7th would pan out. We know that spotters, Israeli military spotters in the towers around Gaza had been reporting for months that they'd seen activity in Gaza that looked like Hamas and other fighting groups were rehearsing, preparing for some sort of attack on Israel. All of that was ignored. It was all ignored because there was a belief, we now understand, right at the top of military intelligence and conveyed and held by the Israeli government that Hamas did not want or was not in the market for looking to attack Israel. It was more interested in governing Gaza. Well, we now know that that was not the case, and Aharon Haliva is the first. Well, he accepted responsibility, I think, about a week or so after October the 7th, but has stayed in post during the war in Gaza. He's going to stay in post now, in fact, until a replacement has been found. But he is the most senior leader to resign. He's called in his resignation for a national commission of inquiry to be established into what led up to October 7th to highlight and expose the failures. The government has yet to do that. The government says it wants to concentrate on the war in Gaza, but many accuse Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of deliberately prolonging that war because he also does not want to face up to any responsibility he might have for October the 7th.
I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more of this in the coming hours. For the moment, Bernard, thank you. Major General Aharon Haliva is the first senior Israeli figure to quit following the Hamas attack. Well, let's bring in Omar Shaw. He's been following events with us here from the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. Interesting departure at the top of the Israeli military brass.
Quite interesting, yeah. It's somebody had to take the fall for 7th of October. I think it's quite high level in terms of the top of the military intelligence. Although the issue was more of the intelligence cycle because they had the information, they saw the preparations. These preparations were reported by junior intelligence analysts, but it did not reach the top brass because it was thought that it's not significant enough, and what they're seeing, maybe Hamas is willing to do something like that, but it's incapable of doing so. So it was an underestimation of the capabilities of the Qassam battalions.
In terms of the sort of prism in which we view Israel and how it likes to be viewed by the international community, it's under quite some pressure, really. Now we're hearing of this military general being removed or resigning, but also a battalion also being sanctioned by the US. There is pressure and a little bit more pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. But that battalion particularly, the 97th Battalion of the Kfir Brigade, of the 900th Brigade, it's a sort of a rogue battalion in a semi-rogue brigade. It's not the first time. It was accused of beating a Palestinian-American citizen who after that died after a heart attack, which this was in January 2022. So the US was sustaining pressures since then and demanded that some sanctions get applied to this, or discipline get applied to this battalion particularly. And the Israeli response was that we're going to deploy this battalion, this infantry battalion, from the West Bank to the Golan Heights, so put them under the Northern Command. It was done on paper, but we're not sure if that actually happened. They stayed in the West Bank, and after the 7th of October, they were deployed in Gaza. And apparently there are some quite a few violations that were recorded there as well. So that increased the pressure to do something about this battalion.
In terms of the overall viewing of the Israeli military at the moment, whether it be the West Bank or Gaza, do you think the spotlight is more on them now, not just by the United States, but by the EU, for example? I mean, if America's going to put some sanctions on this particular battalion, normally the EU follows suit as well.
Oh, absolutely. After all this level of destruction, this levels of multiple allegations against crime, for crimes against humanity, that level of force concentration, firepower concentration in areas that are civilian areas, widely populated with women, children, elderly. After all this, so you'll probably have some significant political pressures on the Israeli government. But historically, the Israeli government has been quite defiant in resisting such pressures and acting according to their plans, which does not include the human rights reservation of the Palestinians, for sure.
We shall see what happens in the coming hours. For the moment, Omar Shaw, thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.